Good afternoon, everybody. Here down at US Workboats, down in the shop here, and well, for starts, I'd like to say, I hope everybody's having a good weekend. I thought I'd come down here and talk about my shear, and you're probably not going to be too surprised that I'm a little bit disappointed in how you keep this machine here. I don't really know what you're doing today, but you're probably sitting around doing nothing. And I thought, well, I don't like doing nothing, so I'm going to show you a few things about this thing. It's a really useful tool. You can do a lot with it. But the number one thing, before I even introduce what we're going to do with it, is we're going to tell you it's not a table. I don't know why people leave stuff on it. I don't want anything on here ever. It bothers me that people do it. Don't do it, and don't do it ever. Anything that's set on here, by the way, you might set it here, and somebody might set another plate in here, and it's going to do damage, or you might leave a piece in there. Don't leave anything on here. And I'm talking about anything ever. It's not a shelf, okay? Definitely don't want cups and junk and stuff all over it. It's really, if we work and we have a mess, we do poor work. It's really simple, don't put anything up here. Not really sure. I guess I'd like to start by looking behind the shear. I know it's the weekend here, but I want to look behind the shear, and I want to tell you that I'm probably not going to be that impressed. I'm going to be disappointed. Okay, I've come back around the back of our machine, and not much to my surprise, I'm a little bit disappointed when I come back here, and I'm disappointed because here we are again with a tool, and we've got a messy work area. This is not like a scrap bin back here. This is a work area. Now realize that, pieces fall off of here when we cut. It's okay if there's a few of them, but they shouldn't just be left here for, days or weeks on end. It should be cleaned up, and it should be cleaned up every day. All the small bits, they go into the scrap bin for recycling, and some of the good bits, we're going to take these bits that are bigger, take them out of here, and we're going to put them. We're going to put them in a rack, and we need to organize a rack too. What I will tell you, I really don't like it. I have to point the stuff out. Maybe when I come to do this next video on some other piece of equipment, my shop won't be a big mess. We all work together here at US Workboats and don't like to work like this. So, I guess I'm going to go around the front. I'm going to show you some things about it. But make it clean, okay? Make it clean because it's a hazard if it's like this. And I don't want to spend all my time telling you about leaving stuff a mess. So you got to change your habits here, all right? We're back around the front of the machine, and I want to start first off by talking about the capacity. This is what's called a 10-quarter shear, and what that means is it's 10 feet long. The bed is 10 feet long, and it'll cut a 1/4 inch thick steel plate. Now, that's because, most metalworking equipment is designed around steel. This thing will cut steel excellent, anything thinner than a 1/4. It also will cut aluminum real well, and it'll cut even a little bit thicker in aluminum because aluminum is softer. And it'll cut all the way up to 3/8, and that's what we've said, no material over 3/8. That means no material that's aluminum that's over 3/8. 1/4 inch if you're doing steel. It has a couple parts about it here. These arms, they can be taken off if we want, but these are support arms, so when we put a bigger sheet on here, it doesn't fall off. This is a squaring arm here. This is square to the blade. It's really important, and that's, these things are slightly adjustable, and there's some things set up, but I know it's square to the blade. And the next thing we're going to talk about is the control panel. All right, we're going to go ahead and turn the machine on. It makes a little bit of noise, but that's okay. We're going to turn it on, and we're going to go through some of what this control panel, what it does. First off, the green button turns it on, the red one turns it off. Pretty simple. It's got some numbers on here, and these are in inches. 25 inches, 25.001. 001 is like nothing. It's like super, super thin. Those are hundreds of thousandths of an inch. And those are inches. We can set this thing in metric. We can set it in inches. We have it in inches because we're in America and we work in feet and inches. All right, I'm going to turn it back off because I want to go through some of these other buttons, and I want to be able to have you hear me all. Okay, this automatic is talking about when you push it down, when you let it back up, it goes to the top on its own. Jog, it would stay wherever you left it. We don't want to have it in jog ever. We always want to have it in automatic because of what we're doing with it. This button here is a stroke control, and the stroke, this thing is like I tell you, it's like a guillotine. It comes down, and it comes down. It doesn't hit square and piece all at once. It looks like it's cutting all the way across. It's not cutting like this. Okay, it's not an arm that's tipping. As a hydraulic cylinder on either side, and it's just shifted one way, so it comes down like a guillotine and cuts. Okay, so what we're talking about is if you change the stroke control, it won't cut all the way across, and if we're cutting a lot of shorter pieces, we might want to adjust that. In general, we're going to leave it close to the max, and it'll cut all the way down to the far end. That's what that is. Probably don't need to worry about it too much. It's usually always turned up. The next thing here is the blade clearance. And I pretty much realize you guys probably don't know anything about this blade clearance. It's really simple to use. What we're talking about is there's a gap between the blades. And if you cut thicker material, you want to have it set, there's a bigger gap, wider gap, okay? And we want to cut thin materials, and we want to tighten that gap up. And that's because a thin material will have a tendency to fold. Like if you cut a piece of paper on here, and you had this on a 1/4 inch thick, it's probably just going to fold over. It's not going to cut it. You know, same will happen with thin material, and it'll actually jam the blade, and it'll do damage to it. And we don't want to do that. So that's what that thing is. We turn that on, and we can turn this back and forth, and what it'll do is actually automatically, it's electric motor that'll make them shift that. So it's real cool. It's real handy. There's other things about here. This panel here, this black panel, is all about the backstop. And the backstop is in behind, and what it's designed to do is we push in our material and we touch it on the backstop, and that's the thickness. I'm going to show you also how to calibrate that. But for the moment, we think it's at 25 inches. I'm going to go over some of the startup procedures and some of the things that happen. What sometimes will happen is, and I've reenacted this, but over time, over a long weekend or something, the machine will sag a little bit. And you'll go to put a piece of material in there. Good. You'll come to put a piece of material in here, and you'll slide it in, and it'll hit. You don't know why. And I see people then they go and use the blade like halfway across, and they don't know why. Well, when you turn it on, it doesn't know that it's down part way. What we need to do is cycle it, and it'll come back to the top. So when we turn it on, we push on the pedal once, and we let it up. Now that's going to be clear and open, and we're going to be able to reach all the way to the backstop. All right, so that's a little bit about the backstop. I want to show you how to set it. Let's just say we want to go to 6 1/4. So we would go 6.250. Go to. So what that's saying is 6.250, meaning 6 1/4 inches. Those are hundreds of thousands, and I'll go through all that too, but for the moment, we're just going to say we want to cut something 6 1/4. If we take our tape measure and we push this in here, we can actually see if it's at 6 1/4 or not. And it is. It's exactly calibrated correctly. And I'll uncalibrate it and show you how to fix that. It's actually really simple. But that's what the backstop does, is just moves back and forth, and it cuts pieces a certain size. A couple of things with that. We're always going to cut the small piece off. It doesn't matter what size piece, how big, long, short. We're going to cut the small piece off every time. And when we're processing material, it's going to become important. We don't want it to fold down and like lift up our table. So we're going to always cut the small piece off. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about with this machine is the safety thing. These bars here that are on the front are designed so you can't put your hands in there. You don't want to put your hands underneath there, because if you do, you're gonna, of course the blade will cut your fingers, it'll cut anything off that's in there. Also, these spring-loaded looking things here, those are little hydraulic cylinders, and they come down and they hold the material so that the material doesn't shift. And they go all the way across. There's a bunch of them. There's actually a double set of them in close, because we do a lot of cutting with small pieces. There's two closer together. Those actually have 10,000 pounds of hold down pressure. And I don't know why you put your fingers on there. I've seen people do it. I've actually, in one of my other businesses, I've had an employee stick their fingers in there and push on the pedal, and it squished the end of that gentleman's finger. And he's lucky to have any of it left, but it'll squish it absolutely like a pancake. And I'm going to give you a picture of that. But do not stick your fingers under there. Don't stick them in there anytime ever. Just don't do it. If you have a small piece that's in there, you can't get it out, simply take and push it out with another piece of material and push it. You don't need your fingers in there, so don't do it. Okay, I want to show you guys there's a couple things that need to be fixed. There's some maintenance items which need to be done to this machine. There's this little wire here, and some wonder what that's for. Well, somebody cut it off with a shear because they were using the machine incorrectly, and this is supposed to go all the way across to the other side, and it hooks to another thing that's adjustable. What it does is when we flip the machine on, there's a light that's supposed to turn on. It looks like the bulb is burnt out on the light. I don't like using stuff when it's not set up right. But if what it does, it casts a shadow. The shadow past that wire. It's really tight on there, and we can mark anywhere on our sheet, and it's going to show us where that is. That needs to be fixed because it really speeds things up and makes it, easier for us to do more work. I'm going to turn it back off. So I'm going to show you something else. This table, it stays pretty clean if we use it a lot, but my hands got stuff on it. If we wipe this machine down, and at least like once a month, we want to take and we want to clean that surface a little bit, maybe with some, like a light Scotch-Brite just by hand, and clean it. And we want to put a little bit of light oil on that and rub it in there, because that'll keep it from rusting. And we don't want to, we're not going to grease it all up every day, but maybe once a month, we'll put a little bit of light oil. This is kind of a humid environment where we're working actually, and it tends to get moisture on there, and it causes rust because this is a steel machine. It's a machine surface. It's really smooth. We want to put a little bit of light oil in it. It'll keep it in good repair. And I like things when they're in good repair. Okay, I told you I was going to show you how to calibrate this thing. It's really easy to do. So what I've done is I've told it I calibrated it wrong so I can fix it for us, okay? And if I was to stick my tape measure in here right now, I could find out that it's at 6 1/4, because that's where I left it. But it thinks it's at 6 because I told it was at 6. So we're going to go, okay, that's wrong. I'm going to say, I'm going to push calibrate. And actually, hold on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clear that. And I'm going to say, I'm going to put this at 5.750, which is 5 3/4, and I'm going to press go to. So I fixed it an even amount. And now it thinks that it's at 5.750, but I'm measuring it, it's exactly at 6. So I can fix that. It might get out of sync over time, or somebody might set it wrong and you don't know why. Well, okay, we can fix it. It takes us a couple of seconds. Go to calibrate, and we'll go 6.000 and press and hold the calibrate button for 5 seconds, and now it thinks it's at 6. I'm going to go and I'll move it to another number, and we'll just see. We'll say we're going to go to 5, go to. Now it's supposed to be at 5 inches, you know, and it's going to get, sometimes it's going to be a thousandths or 2 out, you know, which doesn't matter, obviously. Thousandths are really small, but it's come right to 5 inches. I can go in, I can put it in here, just showing that way with my tape measure, and I'm going to cut a test piece, and I'm going to see how I'm doing. Okay, started out with a piece here, and I'm going to cut it 5 inches because I was calibrating this thing. I grabbed a piece that was actually straight on this edge, and it's got a skill saw edge here. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to say, I know this is straight. I'm going to put it here. I'm going to take a small piece off because we're going to square that. And we're squaring the edge, prepared. Let's cut it off there nice. Okay, and it's square here to here. So now I can push it in, and I can push it all the way to the stop, and I can cut it. And I'm not having my fingers in there. I'm going to step on the pedal, and I'm going to go measure what that turned out. So I've gotten my piece, and it's exactly at 5 inches. It's perfect, okay? That's how you calibrate it. It's not hard at all. And, you know, if you want me to go over that with you, I certainly can. We can cut lots of pieces at 5. We can cut them. We can go to 6 again. We can go to, it'll go back to 6. We know it's now calibrated correctly. Cut lots of pieces at 6. We can cut a lot of different things. But right now I'm going to stake a that's like uneven on all the edges, and we're going to cut it into something. Okay, I've got a real awkward looking piece here, and I've decided I'm going to take 2 pieces out of it that are going to be 10 inches by 16 inches, and I'm not going to do a lot of marking. What I am going to do is I'm going to write 2 pieces and then 10 by 16, because I like to make a list all the time, and that's what I'm going to try and get out of here. So I don't have many good edges on here, and I'm at least going to cut 1 to begin with, and I'm not going to use a squaring arm. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to take 1 cut. Okay, now I'm going to put the equipment at 10 inches. I'm going to say go to. Now we can do a lot of work with this thing, and we can make little weird pieces into useful pieces, or we can also wreck a lot of material, and we can waste material. I don't like to waste. We're going to cut it off, and we've got a piece at 10. We've got this with a little notch in it. That's not going to be desirable. So I'm going to push it through just a little bit more. And I can see my shadow in here, sort of. And I'm going to cut that now as a straight line. Now I've got a straight line, and this piece is not 10 inches, and it's not 16 inches, and this is not square to this. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make it square, because this is a squaring arm. I'm going to square it there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to cut it at 16 inches. And by the way, there's a tape measure on here, and you can see it, all right? But it's hitting in the back. Well, this is kind of a junky piece. I could move the backstop, or I could just simply, I could cut it so that that piece was out of the way. I can go ahead, and I know I've got at least 10 inches here. I'm going to slide this in until we get to 16. One of the things you guys might know about me is I'm getting old and I can't seem to see anymore. So I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to have it at 16. Now that we've got our piece at 16, I'm going to go get the other piece from around the back. I'll be right back with you. Okay, so I've gotten a little bit farther, and this is a perfect scenario how I've worked this out. I've got this piece. We know it's exactly 10 inches this way. This end is not square to this because, you know, it just has no reason to be. So I'm going to square that off. Just going to cut a little, make sure you cut like a little bit, like ½ an inch or something off. Now that it's square, I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to bring it out here so that it's 16. And we can look at that on our tape measure that's on here. The other thing we can do if we want, is we put our tape measure in here and we can check if it's 16. Now that becomes important when we have a big long piece going across here. So what we're going to do is cut the small piece off. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut. And I'm done. I've got a piece 10 by 16. Now this piece is 16, but it's not 10. Well, it's also 19 inches. And so we don't want to cut this 10. We can slide it in this way. And we can cut it at 10, but I don't like that because I'm going to cut the small piece off. So I'm going to slide it in here this way until I get to 10 inches. And then I'm going to cut it off. And once again, if I want to, I've got it against my squaring arm, but if I want to, I can check it here with my tape measure. And take your tape measure back out of there and don't cut the end off your tape measure because that would be dumb and you'll ruin it and it'll be junk. Now we took a real awkward piece, didn't have any good lines on it, and we've now got two pieces. They're exactly the same size, and that's what a shear is for. It'll cut stuff up, it'll cut it fast, it'll cut it perfect. One of the things here is I got this, failed piece of a baffle out of a fuel tank, I think, and I might want to make something out of this, and it's got a flange on it. We're going, oh, well, we can't cut it because it's got a flange on it. Well, yes, we can cut it. It doesn't matter that it has a flange on it because it's got a flange on one side. We can take and we can set it on the machine here and slide it in. We can do that. We can cut it, but also sometimes we might not be able to push it in far enough. It's going to hit. So, okay, the other thing we can do about this flange is we can take this and I'll move the backstop back out of the way. And I can take it around the back of the machine and I can slip it in from the back and push it in there and we'll just cut this off. So we're going to go around the back and I'm going to show you how to do that. This is an example of why we don't like it to be a mess back here because we're going to try and go in here and it's junk all over. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this flange pointing down and I've moved my backstop out of the way. And the machine's turned off right now, by the way. But we're going to stick this in here. I'm going to slide it in there, and we're going to go back around to the front, and then we're going to show you we can cut that off. Okay, we don't want to pull that right in tight to that flange. We want to give it a little space. Push it back just a little bit. We're not using the squaring arm right now. We're just taking that flange off there. So down it goes and it's gone. Okay, we still got some holes there. All right, let's square that piece up. Let's square it up and let's square it up fast. Got a real useful piece of material here. Now it's squared up. That flange was off there. We didn't have to use any saws or whatever else. And we could take and we could go through and clean up a bunch of our sort of odd shapes and remnants and we could make them into usable sizes. One of the things I like to do is get all that sort of stuff organized because then we come along, we want a piece, and we got a piece. Okay, we got a thinner piece here, and one of the things we're going to do when we turn the machine on is we're going to take and we'll turn it on and we're going to do the back the blade clearance, and we're going to change that. We're not going to have it on the real big one. We're going to turn that down. We're going to turn it down 14 gauge or something there, and it's going to bring that blade closer together. Otherwise it's real thin, it might fold it over. Decided that I want 200 pieces 20 inches long by 4 inches. So this random piece, we're going to try and get as many as possible out of it. Now, this is a perfect scenario because we need 200, so let's get as many as we can out of here. This thing is 20 3/4, and it's 19 1/4 here, so we're not going to be able, if we cut it at 20, they're not going to, we can't get them out this way, because although we could get them for a while, it's going to be all of a sudden it's going to be too short. So we're going to say, hey, we could cut them 20 40, and then there's some on the end that we can use there, because this thing is 48 this way. So we think about this, which I've done already, we can get a whole bunch of material out of here. We're not going to cut it off. You know, what we're going to do here is we're going to cut it off first, and flip it over, and we don't know which edge is square and which edge is not. So that's going to be important for us to figure that out. And so what we're going to do is we're going to square the thing, and then we're going to get started. So if we know that if this edge is good, we can square this end. We'll start it, and we'll cut a real small bit off of there. And we're going to then flip it over, and this edge was good and this was not. We're going to slide it in there until it's 40, okay? I'm going to put it in there until it's 40. I'm measuring it here. We can also measure it here, and we're going to cut it off. Now we can make it into strips. And we're going to push 4 inches and go to and we can now cut that into a bunch of strips this way. Or we could say, well, then we got to cut all those twice. It's a bad idea. Let's go to 20 now. And go to 20 instead of 4, push go to. Now, what I want you to get used to doing is either use the back gauge or use the squaring arm, not both, because if these aren't exactly perfect, and or if the sheet that you're working with isn't exactly square, don't use this one and that one, especially when the piece is bigger. You know, use the backstop, or use this, okay? Not both, okay? You push that in. It's at 20 inches. We're comfortable with that. We're going to cut it. Now we're going to push our 4 inches and go to, and I'm going to go get those other pieces while the machine moves. Be right back. Okay, we got to keep track of which edges are square. This is square to this, and square to this, and this is not square. And I know that because I was keeping track. And this is kind of odd that it's going to be like this, but I'm going to put this at 20 inches here, and I'm going to do that because 4 divides in. Cut that off. I'm going to do that first, and this next piece here, it's less than 20, okay? So we're not going to get 5 pieces out of that. So we're going to take that one and we're going to put it down to 16, because that's a multiple of 4. I'm going to cut that off at 16. Go, why did you do that, Mr. Armstrong? I was like, well, because I didn't want to have a little piece and have my fingers in there, so I made it part, of 4, and it's 20 that way. So now I'm going to slide them in. I'm going to cut them all off there. And now, we don't want to put our fingers underneath there. If we want, we can hold it with this, and we can, we can push it and make sure that it's in there. We don't want to have our hand in there. We're going to cut it. We'll push it off. This one also is 20 by 20 right now, but I'm going to get 5 out of that. Now, this piece you know, it was not square at front. This one is not quite 8, so we're not going to get 2 out of that, but we can still get 1 out of it. So we're going to come over here, because can we get 1? Yes, it's more than 20. So we'll cut it off at 20, but it's less than 8. So we want the 4-inch piece to be out here. So now we're going to need to finally actually mark a piece. I haven't marked a single thing yet today. Finally, now we're going to need to mark a piece, or we can cut, you know, so we should cut this, and we'll mark it 4 on both ends. Slide it in here until we can see that it's lined up. And okay, know that my finger is slightly inside of that, but it's not going to tip. But I haven't, okay, I did slide it in there a little bit. I should have pushed it with something, but it's lined up right now, and I'm going to cut it. Now I'm going to push that out of there with something, and I'm going to go see how many pieces we got. Okay, we actually ended up with 11 pieces out of there, so we had pretty good yield. And they're actually all the same. Those ones I don't have in my hand, but they all are the same. They're all perfect. Now, if you set them like that and you're trying to compare them, if one of them's wrong, you know, you can throw it away or you can trim it or whatever else, but we want them to all be just right. I want to go over one more operation. We're going to take these things and we're going to cut them again, because we don't actually need these for anything. These are just for a demonstration. So we're going to do one more thing and be right with you. Okay, so what I've done here is I've decided I want 4 of these to actually be 4 inches by 16 inches, and we're doing that for a demonstration. Okay, I'm going to turn the machine on. And I'm going to put it right at 16. Here, hold on. Sometimes we got to get our back gauge out of the way because it's going to bump into it. And I've marked it here at 6. I actually have this tape measure, and one of the things that I can do is draw a line there if I want to get back there, so that I don't have to stare and gaze at it a whole bunch, and I can cut it off. I can then take the next piece and put it in there, just line it right up with my blue mark again, and it's going to be 16, and I can cut it off. But I actually want all 4 of these 16 inches, and I don't like to waste time. I like to do everything in a hurry, and you guys already know that. So, nice trick is, what we're going to do here is we're going to actually, if you can come in a little closer, and you can see one's at 16, and I lined these other ones up. Now they're all going to be 16, and I'm going to cut them. I'm going to cut them right now. And bam, we got 3 of them at once in one cut. So now we have them exactly the same length, the same width. It took us a couple of seconds. We don't use it. You don't mark everything all the time. We use the squaring arm, we use the back gauge, and we can cut stuff, and cut piles of it. And we think about the yield. We really do a lot of work with this thing, and it's not dangerous if you don't stick your fingers in there. It's going to be a great machine. It's easy to use. We can get a lot done in a short time. We'll just keep it clean. We'll maintain it, and everybody's going to be happy.